Coming up next, for years, this rock legend had been fighting a losing battle against alcoholism and substance abuse. He was always a controversial figure in rock, but in the late 80s, his personal demons took over. In a drunken act he would forever regret, this musician went completely off the rails and almost killed his wife. Next thing he knew, he was waking up in a jail cell charged with attempted murder. How can anyone come back from something like that? Well, today, we're telling the unbelievable story of how he did it, and how it all relates to a hit song that he wrote for his wife that launched an impossible comeback. Incredible stories coming up on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember watching Headbangers Ball, 120 Minutes, Remote Control, or even Dial MTV back in the glory days of music television, you're going to dig this channel. Nostalgia all the time. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Check the box so you never miss out. You'll dig this channel. There's something here for everybody. Also, check out even more content at our Patreon channel to keep this channel a daily channel. That's 3 channels. So it's time for another edition of our series, Number One in Our Hearts. This is a show that takes an in-depth look into songs that were so great they deserve to be crowned king for at least a week at the top of the Billboard Hot 100. In a perfect world. This one's a no-brainer. Better than anything on the charts at the time. From a rock icon that changed everything, fronting Black Sabbath and then later as a solo artist. Of course, I'm talking about Ozzy Osbourne and his solo masterpiece, Mama, I'm Coming Home.
Hey, Mama, I'm coming home.
As Ozzy Osbourne's eyes came into focus, he thought to himself, it must have been another good one last night. At this point, blackouts weren't exactly an uncommon phenomenon for this rocker. As Ozzy laid there on the bare concrete floor, he took in his surroundings. It was a small square room. There were bars on the window and a bucket in the corner. One of these days, he really had to stop waking up in jail cells. That's what he thought. He started to shout, hello, anybody there? No reply. He shouted again, just silence. Now he was getting nervous. Finally, a pissed-off-looking police officer came up to his cell. Excuse me, Ozzy said. Will someone please tell me what I'm doing in this place? Completely disgusted, the officer said, you really want to know? Why don't I get you your file, and then I can read you the charges. This is when panic started to set in for him. What had he done this time? So the officer cleared his throat and he just read. John Michael Osbourne, you are hereby charged with the attempted murder by strangulation of your wife, Sharon Osbourne, during a domestic disturbance that took place in the early hours of Sunday, September 3rd, the year 1989. The words started to fade out from there. Ozzy felt like he'd been hit by a hammer between his eyes. Staggering backwards, he fell to the floor. Attempted murder? Sharon? This couldn't be happening. He loved his wife. She was his best friend in the whole world. Of course, Ozzy couldn't speak. Slowly, it all started to come back to him. The night before, it had been another heavy night of drinking that was mixed with some meds that his psychiatrist had prescribed him. In fact, Ozzy had been on a bender all week, and he and Sharon had been fighting all throughout. And after putting the kids to bed, Sharon sat down and started to read in their bedroom. This is when Ozzy came in, and he sat down on the sofa across from her. And very calm, in the eeriest way possible, Ozzy said, we've had a little talk, and it's clear that you have to die. In that moment, Ozzy lunged for Sharon, and he started to choke her. Now, miraculously, Sharon was within reach of their panic button. And then she was reaching for something to fend Ozzy off. She pressed it, and somehow she survived. Soon after, the cops were hauling Ozzy away. Sharon, who knew Ozzy's drinking demons all too well, said that for years she never knew which version of her husband was going to come walking through that door day or night. Good Ozzy or bad Ozzy. And that night, it was Ozzy Osbourne at his worst. Ozzy stayed in his jail cell for over 36 hours. In that time, all he could think about was not losing his family. Afterwards, in court, Ozzy pleaded temporary insanity. The judge granted him bail on 3 conditions. 1, that he enter rehab. 2, that he didn't contact Sharon. And 3, that he didn't go home. Ashamed and completely dejected, Ozzy, of course, agreed. And then he checked into rehab at Huntercombe Manor in England and stayed there for a couple of months. Eventually, Sharon came to visit, and he apologized profusely. He told her how much he loved her and the kids. That's when Sharon said, "Ozzy, I'm going to drop the charges." Ozzy couldn't believe what he'd just heard. Sharon would say that she didn't believe that he was capable of murder. It just wasn't him. In her words, he was a sweet, gentle man when he was sober. But when he got drunk, good Ozzy disappeared and someone else took over. Sharon wanted that other person to go away forever. Now, it wasn't the first time Ozzy promised to stop drinking, but he was hoping that this time it would be his last. In true AA fashion, Osbourne admitted, "All I know is I am an alcoholic and my name is Ozzy. And I've got to take certain steps to try and arrest this disease because I'm either going to kill myself, kill someone else, or I'm going to go insane." According to Sharon, Ozzy was incredibly frightened when he came home from rehab. He was afraid that he was going to screw up again. So he really tried to keep his behavior in check this time. To Sharon, sober Ozzy was the best company in the world. He was funny, he was entertaining, he was kind, and very sweet. Although Ozzy had been scared straight, as it were, sobriety, it didn't come easy. And Huntercombe Manor didn't completely cure him of his addiction completely. It wasn't his first rehab rodeo after all. I mean, he'd visited clinics multiple times in the past, only to relapse again and again when he became bored of the quiet life. But then, in 1991, Ozzy finally made the momentous decision to do away with the bottle for good. He simply woken up one morning and decided that he'd had enough of hangovers and memory loss and disappointing his wife and his family. With religious zeal, Ozzy threw out every last bottle of drink in the house. He bought an exercise bike and he started a diet, cutting out red meat and spent time at the gym. He would work out for 2 or 3 hours at a time, nonstop. According to Sharon, he was trying to be the best Ozzy that he could be for us. As Ozzy entered the 90s on his new sober regimen, he also needed to keep himself busy by getting back to work. And maybe in some sense, the chaos in Ozzy's life makes every studio album a comeback in some sort of way. But there's no doubt 1991's No More Tears definitely fit the bill.
Seems to be you could have been a better friend to me.
So by the time Ozzy was getting ready to work on his 1991 album, he was becoming something of an aging rocker, if you will. Now in his 40s, he was faced with the choice of refreshing his sound or risk becoming a dinosaur. And after averting prison, surviving rehab, and overhauling his lifestyle, I think it's fair to say that No More Tears was about as comeback as one can get. No More Tears was a clear change in direction for Ozzy Osbourne. While his previous releases, both with Black Sabbath and solo, were dark, all-out heavy rock albums, Ozzy was now showcasing his softer side. But here's the thing, fans took to the new Ozzy light, and so did rock radio. They played the record alongside his much heavier staples. Released on September 17th of 1991, No More Tears spent 86 weeks on the Billboard 200, peaking at number 7. In the UK, it reached number 32, its biggest record to date. It would actually sell over 4 million copies just in America. Clearly pleased, Ozzy would later brag that it was the first album he had ever made completely sober. Said Ozzy, "I reckon the album I did after coming out of Huntercombe Manor, No More Tears, was my best in years. Maybe part of that was because I said to the band before we even started, look, we have to treat every song like it could be a hit single, without being too hokey or try too hard." And it worked, pretty much. Everything about that album seemed to go right. And my new guitarist, Zach Weil, was a genius. My producers were amazing. The idea was to give the album more of a mature vibe. Aside from Zach Weil, the rest of the band members included drummer Randy Castillo, there was keyboardist John Sinclair, and bassist Bob Daisley. Plus there was legendary Motorhead main man Lemmy Kilmister. He also contributed lyrics to 4 songs, including the one we're going to talk about today.
But I can't stand to say goodbye.
The album was produced by Dwayne Barron and John Purdell. The album included the singles No More Tears, Road to Nowhere, and today's featured song, Mama, I'm Coming Home. All of those reached the top 10 on the Billboard Rock Singles Chart. Now, despite what they had been through, Sharon was actually closer to Ozzy than ever before, and Mama, I'm Coming Home would be that proof. He was grateful for her support over the past few difficult years, and he showed his gratitude through the music. What else? Ozzy wrote Mama, I'm Coming Home with his guitarist, Zakk Wylde. Zakk began by writing the music on a piano and worked it up for Ozzy. But when it came time to record it, they tried transposing it to a 12-string guitar, and surprisingly, it worked. That guitar intro would make the song instantly recognizable. Just a great intro. Later, Ozzy would say that he had been walking around with the melody in his head for a couple of years. He just never got a chance to finish it until he worked with Zakk on No More Tears, the album. Musically, the song it's a dramatic ballad. It progresses from Wylde's acoustic picking and emphatic chording to some serious jamming. Of course, a climactic ending bolstered by backing vocals. Lyrically, Oz said that Mama, I'm Coming Home was always something that he'd say on the phone to Sharon near the end of a tour when he was coming home. In fact, Mama was his pet name for her, and she in turn called him Daddy.
Mama, I'm coming home.
That being said, you might be surprised to hear that the lyrics for Mama, I'm Coming Home were actually written by Lemmy from Motorhead. According to Ozzy, Lemmy wrote the lyrics in under 2 hours in an afternoon. He'd written me 3 sets of lyrics. That's what Ozzy would say. He thought it was amazing. He just writes them if he's writing a message. And it's like, he wrote this in how long? And they're not good lyrics, they're amazing lyrics, is what Ozzy would say. Now, although Lemmy may have penned the words, he did so with Ozzy clearly in mind. There's no doubt that with Lemmy's help, Mama, I'm Coming Home was a love letter from Ozzy to Sharon. And the way that Ozzy sings it, it's just graceful.
You took me in and you drove me out, yeah, you had me.
Love the words. You took me in and you drove me out. Yeah, you had me hypnotized, lost and found, and turned around by the fire in your eyes.
Turned around by the fire in your eyes.
Just a beautiful tribute to a long and winding relationship that not only included their marriage. Sharon was also Ozzy's manager, as most know. And the song signified all the roads traveled, good and bad.
I've seen your face 1,000 times.
But I think there's another way you can interpret this song as well. In light of Ozzy's dramatic lifestyle changes in terms of health and family, Mama, I'm Coming Home is also about personal transformation. The real Ozzy, the good Ozzy, as Sharon called him, was coming back to stay. No more alcohol, no more drug abuse, no more blacking out and waking up in jail. Or at least that was the hope. From this perspective, the song can be read as Ozzy rediscovering his best self and putting the past behind him. Either way you want to interpret the song, it becomes symbolic of a much-needed reconciliation between the couple. And Sharon, for her part, said that she absolutely adored it. And again, the vocal, it's just so much truth, so much conviction. Something about Ozzy Osbourne that he doesn't really get credit for. He definitely has one of the most distinctive voices in the history of rock and roll. It's a beautiful voice to me. It's mesmerizing. Nobody sings like Ozzy Osbourne.
I don't care about the sunshine, yeah.
And with this song, he's at the top of his game. A smartly crafted, radio-friendly Ozzy Osbourne power ballad that just tugs at your heartstrings. What's not to love? Not surprisingly, a lot of people did love the song, and it became Ozzy's biggest single from No More Tears. It reached number 28 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it just missed the top of the mainstream rock charts, going to number 2. Internationally, it had less success, but it still went to number 32 in the UK and went to number 27 in Germany. Actually, aside from collaborations with Lita Ford on Close My Eyes Forever and then Post Malone on Take What You Want, surprisingly, Mama I'm Coming Home was Osbourne's only US top 40 hit.
If I close my eyes forever, you want from me, take what you need from me, take what you want to go.
And actually, that hit with Post Malone, it returned Ozzy Osbourne to the top 10 for the first time in 30 years and a few months. He actually broke a record that Dobie Gray had set a few years before that with Slip Away. He did a version with Uncle Kracker.
I wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away.
It was 30 years after that. Anyway, just amazing.
I never needed anything from you, and all I ever asked.
2 music videos were created for Mama I'm Coming Home. The first was a high-tech, surreal offering that actually Ozzy didn't like. Guess he felt the video's plot didn't match the song's concept, and he wanted to do something simpler instead. And he would actually take inspiration from another hit song that was surging at that moment, Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit. In fact, Ozzy said the song and the video had a major impact on him. And he was very proud when he later found out that Kurt Cobain was an Ozzy fan. How could he not be? So for his second attempt at Mama I'm Coming Home, Oz hired Smells Like Teen Spirit director Samuel Baer. And Ozzy said that the sepia-toned result was just perfect, exactly what he was looking for. And though Ozzy and Sharon have continued to have their fair share of marital drama, the couple are still together after all these years. And Mama I'm Coming Home, it remains a true standard in the rock and roll canon. One that should definitely have been number one. It would have been just the crowning achievement for him. I remember, back when this came out, even though I'd given up on top 40 radio for the most part, at that time, my friends and I, we were deeply entrenched in new wave and alternative and grunge. We all loved Ozzy. I bought this CD and I was just mesmerized by its message. To me, it seemed like the most personal music that Ozzy Osbourne had ever recorded at a moment where grunge had completely taken over. Everyone could recognize that this song and this album were inspired. And it should have been at the top of the charts. In fact, you know what? Let's take a look at the top 5 songs from that week, the week that Mama I'm Coming Home peaked at number 29. At number 5, you had Masterpiece by Atlantic Starr.
I found the masterpiece in you.
At number 4, you had Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, having been just re-released due to its brilliant use in Wayne's World. At number 3, you had Jump by Criss Cross. Tears in Heaven by Eric Clapton was at number 2.
If I saw you in heaven.
And Save the Best for Last by Vanessa Williams was spending its 5th week at number 1.
Save the best for last.
Actually, I really like Save the Best for Last. It's a great pop song. But in a perfect world, we could push everyone down one slot and King Ozzy, number 1, just for 1 week. Just for 1 week. I mean, Queen and Ozzy Osbourne in the top 5 together. Yes, please.
You think you can stone me and spit in my eye?
Hey, leave us a comment about Ozzy Osbourne and Mama I'm Coming Home, this classic song. What do you remember about it? Where does it rank in Ozzy's catalog? What do you remember about music at this time in 91? Let's have a great discussion below. If you like this episode, make sure to check out our other episodes on Black Sabbath and Ozzy. I'll try to put the links below in the description. Also, if you haven't already, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. Check the box. You always know when our interviews and videos are coming out. Check us out on Patreon. All of this is about keeping the music alive. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friend.